Thank you for the introduction, and it's great to be here with you guys today. It was really interesting to get the first email correspondence and some of the things that we were just starting to look at and hearing from our European counterparts. And so I have been over to the Netherlands over in April to take a look at some of the systems that they're currently using. So the title of today's talk, supporting highly prolific sow herds with milk supplementation. So one of the last questions is biological capacity. What do we do? We're constrained. Well, the Netherlands also has some of their own constraints. And so the first portion of the talk will focus on the Netherlands and their pork business model and why milk supplementation works for them. So as all you probably know, goals drive decision making. Business goals, any business, and that includes the pork industry, that those business goals then drive your production goals. Seems simple. However, I start here because context is king. And in the case of today, we'll look at the system the production business model of the Netherlands and how using artificial rearing system works for them. However, it works for them because of some of the constraints that they have been in achieving those goals, primarily related to animal welfare, environmental concerns, and then limitations in terms of antibiotic use. So goals are to generate revenue, and we can do that in the large scale of reducing cost of production, improving productivity, and in the case of, for today's talk, primarily focusing on sow productivity. And we all know that there's a myriad of factors and metrics that we can quantify to determine success and areas of opportunity for improvement. You know, things like we've already talked about litter size, weaning weight, litters per sow per year. However, I do want to spend some time talking about the production system and how the Netherlands works, because that really brings a lot of context to, like I said earlier, as to what they do. So, and some of this might be a refresher, but from 1960 to 1996, the Netherlands experienced very rapid growth in their pig inventory. So from 3 million to a little over 14 million pigs. And it was at this time in 1996 where they had an outbreak of classical swine fever, and there was a lot more public interest in regards to how pigs were being raised and what that was doing for the environment as a whole. So it was about this time that there was legislative action taken, and there were basically caps put on of a pig inventory then of about 12 million pigs. So more recently, from 2009, the latest data I could pull was from 2013, we still have an increase in total born per litter. However, with relatively stable stillborns per litter, that increase in litter size was really attributed to, and in fact, live born per year. With a slight increase in pre-wean mortality, that still was not enough to offset that increase in live born per litter, and so they are weaning an increasing number of pigs weaned per litter. However, the litters per sow per year have remained relatively stable. However, it still then results in an increase over the more recent years in weaned piglets per sow per year. So this increase in pigs per sow per year obviously comes at a cost. And what they have seen, and I want to point out before I get a little bit further here, is that these are values at 11 weeks of age or average daily gain from birth to 11 weeks of age. And why they use 11 weeks of age is because a fair portion of their pigs then are exported as feeder pigs to other countries. And we'll touch on the whys behind that in a little bit. But so these are average daily gain from birth to 11 weeks of age. Has declined as that pigs per sow per year has increased. However, in the scope of the weight of pigs per sow per year at 11 weeks of age, that has increased as well, despite that decline in average daily gain. Okay, so those last couple tables ended at 2013, a little bit more recently, so this includes 2014. So the Netherlands, so these are sorted, this is pigs weaned per sow per year, and these are sorted by, from decreasing to increasing order. So we have the Netherlands over here on the right-hand side, being second in the highest pigs per sow per weaned pigs per sow per year, second to Denmark. So very prolific sow herd, relative compared to pigs weaned per sow per year in the U.S. So they are dealing with, what do they do with basically 20% more pigs per sow per year than what we currently are producing. So that is the entire country of the Netherlands. With their total inventory capacity, their pig inventory max of around 12 million pigs, they have a sow inventory of about 1 million. Certainly that's far less than the number of sows that we have in the U.S. at around 6 million sows with but again, a much smaller country. So the Netherlands would be about 1/3 of the size of the state of North Carolina. Concentrating those pigs even further, about 60% of those pigs then are raised in about 10% of the mass of the Netherlands, or surface area, of the Netherlands. So concentrating those pigs even further. So our first factor, kind of difference comparing the two countries, they have very highly prolific sow herd, and they have a much smaller land mass that they're working with. Our third factor then is their production regulations. Primarily those are in antibiotic use, animal welfare. So animal welfare is going to be particularly in housing and space, as well as transportation, and then environmental regulations, whether it's soil, air, water, how they handle manure particularly. So specific for those regulations is about 1998, the first regulations on animal welfare started coming into play, and at that same time, quotas on how phosphorus was handled for manure management. Today, about 14% of manure is exported out of the Netherlands because of their land mass that they have. That is another limitation. So that goes to Germany. However, this isn't just a issue that that the pork industry over there is challenged with. It also then other industries like the dairy industry also are factored in here. In 2002, regulations on where those pig farms were going to be located, and then in 2011, more constraints and goals of reducing antibiotic use, which also could be another factor in that decline in average daily gain that we saw back a couple slides from that birth to 11 weeks of age. And then most recently, requirements related to housing and increasing square footage. Okay, the last feature between the two countries I'll highlight is that of exports. So these exports can be, as I started to mention earlier, live pigs as feeder pigs that are going to other countries and to be grown and finished out. They can be as market weight pigs, just going for harvest in another European country. So it ends up being about 25% of pigs that are produced. So of pigs that are born in the Netherlands, 25% of those are going to be exported as feeder pigs. Another 25% are going to be exported live as market weight pigs. That remains then about 50% of the pigs that they are born in the Netherlands then stay within the country to be harvested. So takeaway from this graph here is that, again, as demonstrated earlier, they produce a lot of pigs per sow per year. However, of all of the countries, and these are all European countries, of all the countries displayed here, this hashed bar is representative of the pigs then that are exported. And this dominance of exports really started, there's a big increase from 2000 to 2005, and then a notable increase from 2005 to 2010. And if you remember back to when the regulations started coming into play, that coincides very much with this rapid increase in exports of pigs. So if you combine the live exports and then also a fair bit of the meat, so pigs that are harvested in the Netherlands, of that meat, a fair bit of that is also exported. So when you combine all of that together, about 80% of the pigs that are born in the Netherlands then end up being exported, whether that's as live, either as a feeder pig or market weight pig, or when you factor in any of the pork product then that is still harvested in the Netherlands. So just to remind you the four distinguishing features between the two countries, and we'll see here in a minute why they're able to use an artificial rearing system, why it works for them, and their business model. Highly prolific sow herd, the land mass and the pig density, that their footprint that they're having to work within, that's one of their big constraints. Production regulations, and then the amount of exports that they do with live pigs and pork. So their big goal, and I think their big goal then is number of weaned pigs per sow. That is one of their primary metrics that they focus on. So production numbers, putting the Netherlands in 2013 side by side with from 2011, 13, and 15. So you can see we, in the US, we do have been increasing in production, however, still not to the same level as what the Netherlands currently experience. So in terms of where their big target goal is weaned pigs per sow per year, in 2013 sit at 28.8. We're around in that 24. There's going to be some PE artifact in here, 23, 22, but even at 24 in 2011, still below that of the Netherlands. So they're just producing a lot of pigs. So because their primary focus is number of weaned pigs per sow, they spend a lot of time focusing on, okay, what technologies can we do to increase pig inventory? Well, they're capped at 12 million for the whole country, but how can they increase the pigs per sow per litter? They do export a lot of pigs, so they can still grow, but their focus really is on the sow farm and getting pigs to that feeder pig weight. Okay, so that kind of sets up the context of why they would do what they do, and now the next few objectives will be what they call the rescue care system in the Netherlands, what it is, how they use it, and then potential, if there are some applications in the US, which our group is just starting to explore. Obviously, there's some differences between the two countries, so putting those factors together in ways that it might be factors that might be applicable in the US. So what is the rescue care system? We have familiarity with artificial rearing in the US. However, this is a little bit different in that it is a supplement. It is not complete nutrition. All pigs stay with the sow during the lactation period. So why we have a rescue milk here and a smooth is a two-phase system. So the first phase of this, and you can think of it in terms of liquid creep. So it's a liquid, it's going to complement the sow's milk, again, not complete nutrition. It's going to be a source of protein and energy, and so it's going to be offered, you can start offering it about day 2 of age, and then this first phase is going to be until the 12 days of lactation. So it's offered 24/7. Then that second phase will be a change at about 10 to 12 days of age, 10 to 12 days of lactation. And it's just going to be the big goal here is going to be increasing dry matter intake and getting them ready for the weaning. So it is delivered, like I said, all pigs are going to stay with the sow. Each crate is plumbed with an individual cup. So, and it's gonna supplement. Each pig is gonna possibly have benefit depending upon their intake there, but it's gonna be plumbed directly into each pen. So a few pictures of what the system looks like. This first picture here is what was taken from one of the farms we visited in the Netherlands. This is what they call their milk kitchen. So you're going to have your milk tanks here. You are going to have heater systems, and they have water filtration. So here's a closer image. This is a show type model here, but your dispenser is going to have conical tube. It's going to be continuous flow. So you're going to have a line going out and a line going back in. It does have a mixer on top. So with the increase in automation of the system, they can set and say they're going to mix every 15 minutes for 5 seconds. The tank of milk will be mixed. This automation also then helps with the cleaning process. So a few more pictures of what it might look like at a farm. This is actually in the farrowing room, and this is on a research study. So we're just going through a lot less milk, so it would actually be set up in more that kitchen system, as we previously saw in the other picture. We're gonna have a line going out. Just gonna run. It's actually tucked along the top here, and then enters each of the stalls here through the line coming back. Okay, so we have one of the key features of this is the nipple system here, where it's continuous flow, but it's also going to prevent any backflow into the continuous flow line. And the nipple system here is going to regulate the fluid level. So a pig, once this milk fills up here, the pig can no longer, they can obviously touch the nipple, but it's not going to overfill. They can't play around with it and slosh up. So there's a lot less waste with the design of the drinker cup that they use in the Netherlands. A little bit on the cleaning of the system. So the cleaning is done about 2 times a week. The first kind of a midweek clean is more of a light bleach solution you run through the system. So you do have to empty out the entire whatever milk is left in the tank. So you do have to be cognizant of how much milk you're going through and planning ahead on that. So empty the tank of the milk, run your bleach solution through the system, and then refill with hot water, rinse it, and then pump out, and then you can fill. The primary clean for the week is more of a alkaline and acid, much more thorough cleaning system. Okay, I do have one little bit of data I can share with you from a European study. They do a lot based on producer testimonies, or there's a lot of emphasis and weight put into that. So I do only have a little bit of data I can share with you. This is partly why we currently have a research study going on, and I'll touch briefly on about that once we finish up here with this study. But in this European study, 20 sows per treatment that had ranged in parities 1 through 4, and then their litters. Those litters were standardized to have a minimum of 14 pigs within the first 48 hours. The 2 treatments consisted of basically, so from 0 to 2 days of age, pigs were treated the same, where they were on the sow, all of them were on the sow throughout lactation, but all just standard colostrum, no crete, no supplemental milk. The treatment 1 then, with the early, they still use a crete. So this line here is basically, think of this as dry creep offering, and treatment 2 as liquid crete. Okay, so this is going to be the rescue care, which is going to have that 2-phase rescue milk from day 2 to day 12 of lactation, and then the less concentrated form from We call that smooth from day 12 to day 21. So this is that rescue care liquid creep as opposed to a treatment 1. It's going to be a dry creep offered 5 to 6 times a day. So from beyond 21 days of lactation in treatment 1, they were still offering a creep feed, but it was a mix of this early creep and then what they would consider a weaner feed that they would offer as a transition prior to weaning. In the treatment 2, the smooth was also then, that weaner feed was also offered from day 21 to day 25 to start a transition from liquid to start to offer them some dry pellet. And then at day 25, what they do with the liquid creep then is the last 2 days before weaning, they do shut those drinkers off. And so to start to try to transition them. And so the last 2 days then they're offered the same weaner feed, that dry creep feed, as treatment 1 is. Now another thing to point out before we jump from this slide is that they are weaning at 27 days of age. Again, one of those pieces of regulation is that pigs have to stay on the sow for those first 4 weeks of age. So that is another limitation that they are working with there in the Netherlands. Okay, so what they found in that study, and this is, so our blue line is going to be the control. So those are pigs offered the dry creep, as opposed to in the red line, pigs offered the liquid creep. And they saw a much greater increase in dry matter intake on pigs that were offered that liquid creep as opposed to the dry. However, I do want to point out that if we use 21, so for example, in the US, if we were to say pigs are weaned at an average of 22 days of age, what they found in the Netherlands and in this study is that the dry matter intake is much more rapid. That was those last final days out from say 22 to 27. So that could be one reason why this looks promising. However, it is a difference, a nuance between the two, and could possibly limit or alter the benefit that we would see in the US. It's something that, there are some positive results, but again, we recognize that there are differences, and so we're working through to see if there are still pieces that would be applicable. Okay, so from a dry matter intake standpoint, how that flushes out into as a percentage. The liquid creep, so the much more concentrated, about 12% of dry matter intake on those that are offered the liquid creep. 12% is going to come from the rescue milk, and then 68% from that smooth formula. So about 80% is going to be in that liquid form, and then those final days, about 20% of dry matter intake is going to be from that weaner, that dry creep. As opposed to over on the control, where predominance of intake was on that in those final days, but their intake was lower. So about 40% of that is going to come from the weaner feed. Okay, increase in weaning weight. What they were able to observe was that on an individual pig basis, with that increase in dry matter intake during lactation, those that were on that liquid creep system had a heavier, about 1.75 greater weaning weight compared to the controls. And then as a whole litter, that amounted to just under an improvement or increase in 30 pounds weaning weight for the whole litter. And again, that's at 27, keep in mind this is at 27 days of age weaning. Looking at the distribution of those weaning weights, essentially what they were able to do was shift everything, so they had a heavier pig. So everything got shifted to the right. So we break these down into weight categories. Those that were now 11, 13 pounds were heavier into that 13, 15 category, and so forth on down. So kind of the key take home from this slide is that they had 30% less pigs that were in those lower weight categories. Okay, so taking that average again, what did that look like then in the nursery for the next 35 days? They had an improvement in average daily gain those first 7 days, and then the final 14 to 35 days that they were after weaning. So this is time that they were in the nursery. So for the whole nursery period, they had a improvement of pigs that were during lactation offered that liquid creep as opposed to the dry creep. Okay, at exit of the nursery, again, this is a key, this time point, they really focus on that 0 to 11 weeks, 77 days, because they have a lot of pigs that are being exported. So again, like they saw of pigs that were weaned, they were able to shift the weight distribution, heavier pigs, at the time that they also exited the nursery. So what we saw in weaning also carried through then to the nursery. So for the first week, so this is average daily feed intake for that first week that the pigs were in the nursery. And again, so our red line is pigs that were offered the liquid creep in lactation, as opposed to those that were in the blue line that were offered just the dry creep. And so average daily feed intake did increase on those pigs that first week, and pigs that were offered the liquid creep compared to those that were offered the dry creep feed. These pigs then were also, what does that mean then beyond that? Okay, so into grow finish. Essentially what they observed, we had at weaning, there was a short of 2 pound advantage of pigs that were offered liquid creep. Essentially that then was doubled at the time of exiting the nursery, and then another doubling of pigs, another doubling in weight by the time those pigs were ready for market, and they were marketing pigs there at 171 days. Okay, so what does this maybe mean for us in the U.S.? Now, keep in mind, they focus a lot on the number of pigs that they can get weaned per sow. Litter size, they have much more prolific sow herd. Again, their weaning age is a little bit older than what we would experience. So there's opportunity, but is some of our opportunity limited because of the difference in weaning age? Possibly, that's an unknown at this point. And then how they feed sows during lactation. Because of some of those regulations in regards to phosphorus and nitrogen, they don't push sows in lactation in terms of feed intake, so they aren't pushing the crude protein, they aren't pushing the lysine because they do have a limitation on how they can handle manure. So that is another factor of why liquid creep feeding, artificial rearing during lactation works in their business model. And another distinguishing feature I had forgotten to mention earlier was their use of foster sows. They will use about 25% nurse sows right now in order to achieve the increase in pig production without using the liquid creep system. So that's really how in the past they have been achieving their increase in weaned pigs per sow per year was by using nurse sows. That also then means that they can't get as many litters per sow per year. So a lot of the benefit they see is by not needing to use as many nurse sows. So of course one kind of last point is we're balancing this. Yes, we're talking a lot about quantity of pigs, but I think it's also important, and I think we all know it's important that these are still quality pigs that we're producing. So as everyone is aware, just again to kind of put side by side, some of the differences are our pigs weaned per sow per year. You can say for the most part they've increased. Yes, there's 2014 in there, but for the most part we are increasing our pigs weaned per sow per year. And one thing I also did not point out earlier is that for the Netherlands, their goal in 5 to 10 years, their goal of pigs weaned per sow per year is 40. So right now they've got a lot of farms that are at 30. Their goal is 40. So they're looking to push this even further. For our sow production in the U.S., we do have some that are up there at that 30 range. But again, competition in terms of global scale, we've got countries that are looking to push to 40. And we do have, as I mentioned earlier, the number of litters per sow per year that we can get is greater than what they currently are using, but they do use a lot of their sows to achieve their goal of pigs weaned per sow. So when I was putting this together, National Pork Board had set the goal, and I'm not sure the year that this goal was set, but it's interesting that it was a goal that to achieve this by 2017, which is not that far away, but improvement in sow lifetime productivity by 30%. So if that was 34 pigs, then that increase of 30% would be getting sows to producing 44 pigs per sow per lifetime. And it was, like I said earlier, it was really interesting getting the first emails from Jeff and what was being done at NC State. And they've done a really nice job in laying out some of the association factors of gilt development characteristics that improve lifetime productivity in terms of cross-fostering, weaning age, and particularly where the two kind of start to run a little bit in parallel with what we're working on is an increase in pre-weaning average daily gain. So what are our next steps? Well, we are currently working on, and we are just in the initial stages. We have one study that we just weaned the last pigs actually this last week. I can share just kind of the really broad overview of what that study looks like. And it's a commercial pilot study, so taking, trying to corroborate. We have one study from the Netherlands. Like I said, they work a lot. They make a lot of decisions based on field testimonials. We try to make decisions based on what research data tells us. So there's some differences there. We have to build a much stronger, more robust data set before we would ever go out and say, this is something that might work for someone. But so this study had 192 sows, 2 treatments, pretty simple, either liquid creep or no liquid creep or the 2-phase liquid creep system. Sows are balanced by parity and sow body weight going into loading of stalls. Litters were standardized to have 14 pigs per sow at the beginning of lactation. And then what we collected for this study is individual piglet body weight at birth, day 2, so that would be when they start technically start the treatment or offer the liquid creep, day 10, when we transition them over to that less dense, that second phase, and then at weaning. The average wean age on these guys were 20 days of age, and then on the sow side, we collected initial and wean sow body weight as well as back fat, and then we will be following these sows looking at wean to estrus interval, so return to service, and then subsequent performance on next parity. So we just literally weaned the last sows last week, so no data to share with you, but at least make you aware of some things that we're working on. So other next steps, things that are to be determined, cost. Obviously cost is a big one. Labor, maintenance, there have been prior experiences with artificial rearing as a complete replacement. This is a supplement. What does that mean for return on investment? I can share with you what our colleagues in the Netherlands have shared with us. So for example, on a 1,300 sow farm, and this is delivered pig. So this is pigs that are delivered to the grow finisher, so up to that 11 weeks of age. So they've taken into account that about a 2% reduction in pre-wean mortality, so they are producing more pigs. So those added pigs that they're producing, you still do have to feed those pigs. So they haven't included that into their economic model. But what they have for an additional cost is per pig is $1.71, and this is done the exchange rate on that. So that is in U.S. dollars. And with their calculations, a 10-month to payback. Again, there's differences in the business models. We're working to build a robust data set and see if we can, what we come up with in terms of costs, and understand that cost is a big deal in this. I mean, it's not something that you do unless it makes sense, unless it pays. So just briefly, there might be application for specific areas. Mark had talked specifically how it would relate to the multiplication system. So in terms of how increasing average daily gain during lactation then has subsequent improvement in sow lifetime productivity, or the association between that. So what do you do, and questions were starting to float, what do you do with those pigs? So do you leave them all on the sow and offer supplemental milk, or do you start fostering off and then there's certain litters that you would offer supplemental milk to? Those are just ideas that are that we're kicking around and looking into. And then what does that mean for whole herd efficiency? So if you improve your sow lifetime productivity, your replacement rate should decrease. So we know that there's a difference in growth performance of offspring from gilts P1 as opposed to those that are more older pairs. So then what does that do for your whole herd efficiency? It might actually speak a little bit to, I think there's a question about more terminal versus more terminal lines, and what does that mean for the commercial herd and flow. And so maybe there is a whole herd efficiency improvement. But again, we're in early stages, sharing with you what information we have and what we're working on. With that, thank you for your time and attention. I'll entertain any questions.
Questions for Dr. Harris?
Where the system's being applied here, what's the average farm size? That's zoning. I'm thinking total number of crates that have to run on the system here.
So the question was, what is a typical farm size in the Netherlands? How many crates would you be running a system through? As an overall trend, they have the same shift in farm size as we do in the U.S. in terms of fewer farms, but that are larger. Now, their farms aren't as big as in the U.S. So the farms that we visited were in that 1,000, 1,500 range. The question was, is this being tried here in the States? We're trying this in a commercial pilot study. In routine practice, we do not have producers at the moment that I'm aware of that are currently using something like this.
What's your cost per pig here?
The question is, what is cost per pig here? That is something that we'll have a better handle on once we have some of the data pulled together from our pilot study.
Any ideas about
At this point, a lot of it's going to depend on dry matter intake, and we're weaning at a younger age, and I have not taken. So if you cut off, say, we take that European data and cut it off at say day 20, 21, 22. I guess I have not. And that's something that we could do is go back and look at. Is that enough of an increase in that first 21 days to offset or what the cost would be just on those days? Yes?
You say you had to clean the system twice a week while in production?
So the question was clarifying cleaning the system 2 times per week. Yeah, currently that's what the protocols are. We are, as part of this study, one thing I didn't mention, that they have found in practice and just using the system in the Netherlands is focusing on pH of the milk itself, and that they have found that when pH starts to decrease, the milk intake of the pigs decreases as well. So that's one thing. Another thing that we're characterizing with the study is changes in pH of the milk. So currently the protocols are 2 weeks, a well-kept system. Maybe you could get by with less, but we're still learning a lot.
What makes the pH go down?
The question is, what would make the pH go down? Aging of the milk, water quality, possibly any prior cleaning, how well the system has been maintained up to that. If you were to get or depending upon the any bacteria that would be even just in the water itself. So some of it would go back to water quality. I had posed the question when we were over in the Netherlands, trying to understand what kind of water quality they had, and how that might affect either precipitation or length of quality of the milk once it's made up. And all I was given was that, well, if the water was good enough for the sow to drink, that the piglets would drink the milk as well. Not a great answer for me, but again, something that we're cognizant of as we're starting to explore what this might look like for US. Yes. Sorry. How many employees on the farm this size? They've got, see, I think it was, we were there, it's like 3 to 4 for that farm that they had there. So.
Do they have 24-hour care for piglets?
Yeah, the question was, do they have 24-hour care for piglets? They do not. On the farm, yeah, for the most part, 24. Yeah, they don't have 24-hour care. Good question.
How much more labor would need to run the system?
Yeah, the question is how much more labor to run the system. In terms of hours, so from the pilots that we were doing, we have a lot more tanks that we're maintaining, just because we've got one tank per row to increase our external units. But an hour and a half, they figured, with cleaning 4 tanks per tank. Sorry, that's an hour and a half per tank. Yeah.
So I take it Provini makes the milk.
The question was, Provini makes milk. We made up a milk for, so Provini Global, yes, they have Netherlands, they have milk that they're making, the formula that because of ingredient availability and some use, we had to make for an experimental purpose. We had to change up some of the ingredients so it's not completely identical. Nutritionally, it's pretty close, but yeah.
How is this different from, as far as I remember, Aggie in the Midwest, they put several rescue decks with the milk.
So how's
7,
it?
8 years ago,
Yep.
and are they working?
Yeah, so the question was in regard to rescue decks. My knowledge of the rescue decks, no one liked them. They all got ripped out. So yeah, how is it different? Pigs stay on the sow. The plumbing is in the crate. So yes, there is that, the history and experience in the U.S. with the rescue decks. So, and this is supplement. It's not complete nutrition. Yeah, so there is that history to work through, and we know that. But then there were the questions too of, all my sows are already loaded with 14 pigs per litter. What can I do? So, yeah.
With 14 pigs in a crate, what's the square footage in a crate?
The question was, with 14 pigs in a crate, what's the square footage on the crate? Specific number I don't have for you. It's a commercial farm, so fairly standard crate. Like I said, I don't have a specific number for you.
Any health challenges on the farm?
Question: any health challenges on that farm? When the study ran, no. We were very fortunate to have pretty clean pig flow there. Yeah.
What's the average parity age for that farm?
So the question was average parity of the farm in the Netherlands. Average parity is about 4.5. Yes.
And this system, do you remove piglet drinkers and provide that as the sole source, or piglet drinker, water drinkers still available?
So for like just
In the
just straight
rescue.
water?
Yeah, just
Okay.
straight water drinkers.
Okay, so the question was, is just straight water drinkers for the piglets, do we remove those, do those stay, those stay? So they have ad libitum access to water, and then it's in addition that they would have the. Great questions.
With that, let's give Dr. Harris another round of applause.